consider that. And then finally, my last question, I'll just throw it out there, is I've heard a concern also that sometimes in special ed classrooms, we have an IA who's out for a long period of time, but they do not get substitutes. So I don't know if there's a way to look at, is that not true? Okay, so those are questions I had and would love to hear your answers to that.
So in terms of the targeting, we did look at targeting by day and presented that to the board at the last meeting, and there really wasn't enough consensus around wanting to move forward with targeting by day. We hadn't looked at any of those other particular areas, but we do know that when we looked at targeting by day, that the board didn't feel as comfortable with moving forward with that as a particular option.
And secondary versus elementary, I don't know if we've looked at those numbers, but has that been considered?
So no, we didn't consider those particular things. We can certainly take a look, but we hadn't considered, we had looked at the day because that was really where we saw the largest increases in wanting to perhaps provide more dollars for those substitutes who would take a sub job on a Friday or a Monday.
Yeah, and I know my understanding was that first we wanted to target the demand on that being created by our end, but that's helpful. Sorry, and I had one other question. The leave buyback program, do we have evidence or suggestion that, let's say, employees on the front end and the, who are far from retirements will be incentivized by that program? Do we know that that truly will be an incentive? Is there any analysis on that?
Well, there hasn't been analysis. We know that when we did our surveys with our employees, they were really very focused on some kind of incentive program where there would be some type of leave buyback. And we know that other jurisdictions have taken advantage or taken part in some type of leave buyback program. So informally, yes, through surveys, we know that our employees would readily take advantage of a leave buyback program. That was one of the top things that they highlighted in the survey to teachers.
Okay, thank you. And then for the IAs, you were saying, Sean, that's not true, that our IAs do have
IAs
substitutes?
do get subs, yes. So if there's a specific concern at a specific school, then we can work to remedy that. But ultimately, substitutes are offered for instructional assistants that are working directly with students.
Okay, and we don't see a higher rate of unfulfilled subs in that area?
Not generally, no.
Not generally. Okay, so it might be more school by school. Thank you.
Ms. Keys-Gamarra, followed by Ms. Evans.
Okay, I'll start with my priorities and just maybe my colleagues can weigh in on that. I think when we had this discussion, for me, my primary focus was on retirees, because I think we can get those experienced teachers back in the classroom. That's very valuable. When I look at the options you have listed, raise retiree rates, fiscal year 20 fiscal forecast, but I don't see the 100% of market for them. Do we have that? I mean, it doesn't look like we're comparing apples to apples in those top two categories. Oh, okay. I didn't quite understand that. So we don't have that number right now. And then also, do we have the number for, and I know Ms. Corbett Sanders asked about that, instituting a leave buyback program only for the subs. We don't have that number right now? Only for the teachers?
No, we would have to take a look at that and decide which teachers get subs, which don't get subs. There's a bit of we'd have to look at the categories for those employees who would get subs, not get subs. It's a deeper dive with that.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess that begs the question as to how you were able to come up with a number covering teachers and across the system.
That's looking at the totality of employees who are in ERFC.
Okay. So I guess that the main thing I wanted to know was what it would cost to raise the retiree rate to 100% of the market, and we don't have that. And also, did we look at how other jurisdictions are dealing with their finding substitute problems? Do we look at their?
We've looked at other school systems, and we did bring that information as part of the last presentation. We've looked at this from many different perspectives, and we brought our best thinking at the last meeting, and are bringing back the information that the board asked us to provide for this meeting.
Okay. All right. I think my colleagues covered most of what I had to say.
Ms. Evans?
Thank you. I can certainly support the leave buyback. I think that's an excellent idea. And hopefully that would have more teachers in place. So you don't have a total number for bringing everybody up to market, is that correct? You don't have that yet, but you're working on that? But both non-retirees and retirees, or do you have a figure on that?
Okay, so let me just try to provide some clarification. For the first column where it says no degree short-term rates,
Right.
that 103.85 is the market average, the current market average.
Right.
What we had brought back before was something below the market average. So 103.85 would bring that group up to market average. Then you go to the second top column of BA degree short-term. 112.01 is market average, so we're recommending to bring that group up to the market average. The last column for our retirees in short term, we brought back what was included in the fiscal forecast was a retiree rate of 143.50. That is over the market average. 143.50.
Is over the market average? It says 100% of market average.
Yeah, that is the market average, but that is not what we assumed in the fiscal forecast. In the fiscal forecast, we assumed that we would pay $20.50 per hour, which works out to be $153.75. So you can see that it's more than
Wait.
that.
Say that again, 150?
$153.75.
Okay,
times 7.5
so,
hours.
so that 0.9 actually is more than market average.
Wait,
Oh,
we
okay.
need to take time to analyze this because I
So
use
actually
7.5
that
hours and I'm just told it's 7 hours. So that's going to change everything.
All right,
Sorry.
so it would be, so bringing all of our subs to market average would be something less than 2.6 million. I'm looking at the 2.6 million now total now. Correct?
If we don't
I
know the
guess-
answer
I
right now,
guess-
we just need to go back
okay.
and we'll take a look.
I guess
with the
another way of
question.
saying it is that top figure, the 0.9 would be something less than 0.9. So we would save some money there, okay. So, all right. Well, that's good to know. Where are our vacancies greater in short-term or long-term? In terms of percentage?
The greater vacancy rates are in the short term.
They are in short-term, okay. Well, I do think that we should probably, when we cut the sub rate a couple of years ago, it wasn't because we wanted to, it was because we were in very difficult budget times, and that was one way we thought we could help with the budget. So I do support going to market on our subs, and it's good to know that doing all of these things would actually be a little less than the 2.6. So I will agree with Mr. Moon that if I understood you properly, Mr. Moon, that to assume that we would add this back in, so maybe it's 2.4 or something. But whatever that is, I could support doing that. I also received an email from the same retiree that Ms. Palchuk did, and she actually had quite a few things to say that I think were worth noting, including she had some suggestions on better onboarding for retirees. I can pass that on to all of you. She felt that as a recent retiree, she wasn't really recruited to be a sub, and she thought that that was one thing that we could do, grab them right away. And she said that that she felt that the process was cumbersome and difficult to sign up for this. That there were ways that we could help our newest retirees sign up. You were about to say something, Dr.
I'd love to get the contact person and then put her in contact with Sean so he can get that feedback and,
Okay.
either corrected or look at program improvement in ways that we can.
I just sent
Do
it
it.
out.
It can be difficult for us to do that for a variety of reasons that have to do with IRS and other issues around recruiting those individuals after retirement.
I'm sorry, what's the problem with recruiting them right after retirement?
We have to be able to demonstrate that there is a break in service in order to be in alignment with the retirement provisions.
Okay. And how long
the
is that
retirement
break-in?
plan provisions. So
that a
there has
year?
to be. So we have our current practice is that individuals need to be separated for 30 days.
Okay.
Those 30 days have to be days that would have been working under normal conditions. So for our teachers who work 10 months of the year, the 30-day period typically starts in August when they would come back to work and runs through the majority of September. So
Okay.
after that point, then we're able to reemploy individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the provision prevents us from proactively recruiting them as they're separating from the division. So that would be a violation of the IRS.
Sean, does that count for subs too?
Yes.
That's for subs too?
Yes.
But we can do
All
that
right.
after those 30 days, just to clarify? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, so I guess my response to that would be, all right, if we can't do it the minute they walk out the door, we have their address. You know, we know who they are. We know where to send the pension check, right?
No pension check unless you sub for 30 days of the
Well,
following
there
year.
you go. I think you're on to something. Yeah.
Your first pension check you have to pick up at the sub office. We can do
There
it
you
that
go.
way.
Hey, there you go. See, now we're thinking. So I do think that based on what this recent retiree said, there must be ways that we can
Yeah, we can
connect with them.
brainstorm,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And she also suggested going to GMU and to Nova. So, you know, we've got people training there, that would be a good opportunity for us. So she actually had quite a few ideas. I appreciate Ms. Palchek sending that out to everybody. So anyway, I think I've said all I have to say. Thanks.
I have two go backs, if we can be quick. Ms. McLaughlin and Ms. Corbett Sanders.
All right, first of all, I really appreciate Mr. Moon trying to get us to streamline and focus and just recommend that maybe Dr. Braybrand put the 2.6 into the budget. I mean, we have the placeholder, but add the additional 1.6. My apprehension with that is I feel like our colleagues have asked some really good questions about the leave buyback. And as we know with budgets, once the superintendent brings a proposed budget to us, then it's going to take 7 votes to pull it back out. And I feel like there was a lot of questions here still, so I'd be a little reluctant to support having this additional 1.6 just automatically rolled back in there. And so I hope we'll just, take a vote about where people are on that. But I do also understand this is the superintendent's budget, so it doesn't matter what our hands up. Scott can decide what he wants to do, but I think it might at least be helpful for you to see where we are in comfort level on the leave buyback portion of this. And then the second thing is, Dr. Braybrand and team, I just think that this slide where you were getting a lot of questions is because the terminology in the top section of this slide doesn't match the bottom section. So when it said raise the retiree rates to fiscal 20 forecast, we talked about that. And then down below, you had the market rates. So I think
We
they just-
recognize that. We
Yeah.
are having that conversation. There was some
Yeah.
miscommunication.
That's
Th-
okay.
That was an oversight, and we apologize. We
That's all right.
certainly do apologize for that error with the board. That was not the intention, but
No, of course, it's fine. I'm just saying that when we get this slide maybe revised, just have the top half match the bottom half.
it
'Cause
will be very
there's
clear.
good information in there. It's just marrying it all
It
together.
will be very clear.
And then I do think that, I don't know where the board is on this, but the fact that the 100% market rate, you all gave us those numbers, that's extremely helpful. It turned out that for some reason we had, as Ms. Burden was talking about, there, it's just more of a terminology and a calculation. So it might be that the market, 100% market rate for retiree at 143.50 might actually be what the fiscal forecast was. It's just a matter of the hours that they work. So what I do think is most important is whether or not the board gives direction or guidance to the superintendent that at minimum, we would like to make sure that our rates for substitute are at the 100% market. And I would just say that where we got here, I will differ in my recollection from Ms. Evans. With substitute pay, it was not about we were trying to close our budget gaps. What I had understood, it was staff came to us, and it was again before your time and Ms. Burden's time, that said this was the market rate. And then we got pushback, and I'm seeing Kevin Hickerson nodding in agreement with me. It was the associations who came to us and said that market rate really doesn't reflect what the market is. And so we redid the numbers, and that's, so I don't want the public who watches this later think that we balanced our budget based on cutting substitute pay. We went with what the consultant said, and then when we did a deeper dive into those numbers, we ended up finding out that, in fact, the numbers weren't accurate, and I think we've done a responsible job as a board trying to correct that.
Ms. Corbett Sanders.
Thank you. I agree with Ms. McLaughlin that I'm not comfortable putting in a placeholder of 2.6 when we know that there's some numbers there that we don't really understand and need to be unpacked. So if you can provide an unpacking of those numbers along the lines of what we've talked about today, I think that will be helpful and make it easier for us to support a placeholder in the budget. The second piece is something that's really not related to substitute pay as much as, and I wasn't going to bring it up until Ms. Evans raised the email from a constituent regarding substitutes in general and how we can recruit them and retain them. And so I'm just leaving this to my fellow colleagues that I think we do need to have a deeper dive conversation about how we recruit and retain and treat our substitutes and temporary employees, not only from a pay perspective, but also in setting expectations for them as well as due process for them. And so I know that's beyond today's discussion, but I do think that when we talk about substitutes, we need to talk about not only their pay, but also their treatment.
May I add one thing? On December the 5th, Mr. McDonald and his team had a recruiting fair and open house for subs, and we had 104 people attend. So I just wanted to share that.
That's excellent. I'm glad to hear that, but I still think we have to have that conversation. Okay, thanks.
All right, my comments, I agree. I feel there's, using Ms. Corbett Sanders' words, some numbers we need to unpack before we add this as a placeholder. Also, I just want to say, with respect to those who plan the budget session, I know how hard it is and do these agendas, but we had 4 topics here. There was no way it was going to happen in 2 hours. I could have used the 3-minute rule. I chose not to. I think there was too much here to try to do that, and I don't like that. I don't like being a timekeeper. I don't like cutting people off, and I don't like you know, the arguments that ensue as a result of that. So we are, what are we, 2 hours behind schedule? Absolutely. 3 hours behind schedule almost. So I was reminded by our clerk that we do not do next steps on budget items. What we do is we will be sent the notes on things we discussed as next steps, and then we can submit them individually as budget questions. So that will take off this time on voting and things like that. And then Ms. Burton went through the process. It's the same process that we've always used to submit budget questions, but we will all receive the document of the follow-up notes for today. So Ms. Corbett Sanders, maybe you and whoever the next 2 people are can decide if you want to, you know, go through both agenda items. And because I know some people, we have a hard stop at 5, maybe we can get through 2 things. But with that, this agenda item is closed, and we will take a 3 to 5 minute break.